Indigenous Peoples Organization. You have been waiting long, and we have let the others speak several times while you have patiently waiting.
Fine.
Go on.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Kim Gottschalk, and I work at the Native American Rights Fund in the United States and represent the National Congress of American Indians, and I've worked along with the Indigenous Caucus since Copenhagen, many, many meetings of the caucus. I do want to stress, however, that there is not an ongoing caucus at this session, and so I'm not speaking officially for them, but for my organizations. But the comments I'm going to make are very general, and I would have no reason to believe would vary from what the caucus might say. In 2007, the United Nations itself adopted the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and 150 countries nationwide have ascribed to that declaration. That declaration does not grant rights to Indigenous peoples, rather it recognizes their inherent rights, their right to self-determination, the right to be involved in all matters, decisions made that might affect their rights, the right to free, prior, and informed consent. And I think one of the problems is trying to fit Indigenous peoples into the civil society mold. They don't belong there. We've heard references during this session to consulting with civil society, especially Indigenous peoples. And in the same breath, we hear that Indigenous peoples control huge parts of the Amazon and indeed huge parts of the tropical forests worldwide. They're self-governing, their rights are inherent. They don't come from the state, so the one observation that there's titling being done and land was being given to the Indigenous peoples is actually incorrect. Those rights are inherent and were at long last being recognized. And what all this means is that Indigenous peoples there has to be a sea change in the approach to Indigenous peoples in this entire process. For example, the Green Climate Fund has 2 active observers from civil society. It is impossible for civil society to carry water for Indigenous peoples. There must be a recognition of their status. We hear a lot about decisions to be made in connection with the best available science, and we certainly don't take issue with that, especially if science is interpreted to mean traditional knowledge. If it's not, then it should be in terms of the best science and traditional knowledge. Indigenous peoples have a lot to offer in this regard. And let me just close real briefly that any outcome document of the Durban platform must integrate an overarching human rights-based approach, including the rights of Indigenous peoples contained in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, must operationalize equity for Indigenous peoples, must recognize the value of Indigenous cosmovision and knowledge, technologies, practices, customary governments, and institutions. It should further guarantee full and effective participation and active representation of Indigenous peoples in all processes, programs, and actions at all levels, including inter alia, MRV, enforceable safeguards, as well as direct access to all funding mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you.